Since we posted our pantry video back in January, we've been getting lots of questions about having food security in our house and how you can get started having some food security and what it costs to get started. So I kind of want to go through some of those frequently asked questions about having food security. If you're just meeting me, my name is Amy Cross and I teach you how to save money on groceries. And one of those ways is not having to go to the grocery store all of the time, because just walking in to grab a thing or two, you can be surprised on how much you end up grabbing that's extra and how it affects your budget. And over the years, I have developed a plan for our family that we don't have to go to the grocery store, but once every 3 to 4 weeks. Sometimes we can even push it out a little bit longer than that. And that is our average to get fresh dairy and to get fresh produce. But we also have food security in our house using that same grocery budget that I use all of the time of $135 per person. I know that we are covered if there is an emergency and we have to not go to the grocery store and fend for ourselves for a while. The first step on having food security in your house and it's saving your grocery budget is not to overbuy. So I think it is really important to know what you have in your house and what ingredients you have and keep those items rotated so they don't spoil. So 3 times a year, I will do a quick inventory of everything that I have and kind of check supplies and check things that I need to use up. And this goes for my pantry and my freezers, making sure that I'm eating those seasonal meals up, especially like right now, we're heading into spring and nicer weather. I'm wanting to use up some of the things that are in our freezer that I don't want to turn our oven on in the middle of the summertime. So thinking about the things that you already have in your house and cycling through those and looking at your ingredients to see if there's just 1 or 2 items that you could buy to make complete meals, start writing those down on a list. So I do not think it saves you any money in the long term if you are just compulsively buying items and stashing them away. I know sometimes that makes you feel like you have a little bit of food security and it brings a little bit of peace, but if those items aren't rotated and they're not safe to eat, then it really hasn't saved you any money. Things that I like to keep track of in my grocery planner are how often I'm needing to buy things. So I can go back and look and see when the last time I bought like mustard or barbecue sauce and know that we're going into the summertime and that's when condiments normally go on sale. But I don't want to buy more than I need for like 3 months or 6 months, depending on how much storage space that you have. So again, if you're buying a ton of extra just because they're on sale and you don't have a great place to store them and you're not rotating them, that's not really helping. But we do have food security in our house, and some of the reasons that we have that is because when the pandemic first started, we had one of our kiddos home that is gluten-free, and I realized how quickly those gluten-free items had went off the shelf and it didn't seem like they were ever coming back. And for the first time as a mom, I started understanding what our grandparents had been dealing with during the Depression or ration cards, and it made me want to have a little bit more food security, more than just like the 3-day to week window that we had planned for in the past. So over the last couple of years, I have really worked on building up our food security here in the house if there was a long-term event that we couldn't go to the store. So I do think about if we will have power or not have power and work through some of those scenarios. It's kind of a fun topic, fun for us, I guess. Mike and I, when we're on a road trip and in the car for hours at a time, we'll actually like talk through some of those different scenarios and how we would deal with if we were out of power for a long time or if we had enough water in the house. But when you're going to the grocery store and wanting to get food security in your house, I would first start with things that are dry good pantry items that your family is used to eating. So if you did have a heat source, like even a single burner stove, or if your stove was working, a great thing to start with that most kids like is pasta and pasta sauce. You can just keep some extra of that in your pantry and make sure that you have it rotated. We always have some cereal and some shelf-stable milk here too, so we know that even if it's a day that we don't want to go to the grocery store, we can have something that is here and it's really easy to make. And who doesn't like cereal? But when we're talking about like long-term food security. I do like to buy things in bulk, and it helps save some money. So I talk a lot about buying my spices in bulk, and that way I have sometimes up to a 3-year supply of what I need, and I store those like in quart mason jars, and then I just refill my drawer here in the kitchen. But other items that I buy in bulk that people think about often is buying large bags of rice, and oatmeal is another one that I will get 25 pounds at a time, which you can grind up and use as oat flour. And then also when my kiddo's home, I make sure that I always have gluten-free flour here. So the flour, when it's stored in a Mylar bag, it will last a lot longer. If flour is just in the bag that it comes in and it's in your pantry, it's only good for about 18 months. So the flour is something that I make sure that I'm continuously rotating out. In any pastas, we are rotating pretty regularly. Other things that I have in our long-term storage is dried beans. Now, normally in our pantry, we are using canned beans, and I do have a handheld can opener that I use all of the time. So if the power was out, I could still open up the can of beans. But I do keep dried beans, which will last for decades in the long-term storage. Another thing that I keep is wheat berries instead of flour. It only lasts about 18 months to 3 years, depending on how you store it. Wheat berries, on the other hand, that you can grind up and turn into a flour, it will actually last for 30 years. So I have it properly stored away, and as long as I use about a gallon of those wheat berries about every year, I have enough wheat berries to last until I'm 75 years old. But it only takes up a couple buckets full, and I know that we have food security here. I could end up making any kind of sourdough item, but I can also use yeast and make other kinds of breads or waffles or pancakes, any kind of biscuit. But those wheat berries can also be cooked and eaten as a grain. So with the 12 gray buckets that we have down in this little tiny cubby hole in our Harry Potter closet, is what we call it, underneath our stairs, we have a year's worth of food security. Some of them I use often, and I'm rotating those things out, like our oatmeal. I'm using those things up, and then some are just for our long-term food security that I'm not worried about using up for another 20 or so years. Some other items that I keep on hand is I make sure that we always have some canned meat or canned protein sources. So if you buy peanut butter, like how much peanut butter do you normally go through in a year? Just grab an extra one when you go to the grocery store and have a backup one. But we also use like Keystone canned meat, which has a best by date of over 5 years. I know if I keep the meat here in our pantry and I rotate it out about once every 5 years and just use it for meals, then it will end up always being fresh in our long-term storage if there was an emergency, which is kind of funny. There's sirens in the background as I'm saying this. So with some of these things that I store, it's also really important to make sure that your family gets used to eating things out of food storage. I make things like chicken taquitos with the canned meat, or we make chicken salad sandwiches. So we're kind of getting into the rotation of using some of the meat up, and it's just a normal thing for us. Or like making chili or Mexican quinoa, other recipes that we just have on a normal rotation, and that way my family's used to eating extra rice and beans and different items like that went from being like a convenience food at times to more of a long-term pantry item staple. So if you're getting your family used to eating some of the items, if there was a true emergency and you were having to rely on it, it's not such a drastic change for them. So all of the food storage that I have in the 12 gray buckets are things that I have purchased with our normal grocery budget, which is $135 per person per month. And how I've done that is just occasionally get an extra bag of lentils or an extra bag of black beans, whatever we're going to use, and to make sure that those buckets stay full even though we are rotating things out of it. So it doesn't cost very much extra to add some extra things to make sure that you have food security. And as you see, I can hide all of this tucked away in this little tiny closet underneath our stairs. You want to make sure that your food security stays in your house, not even out in your garage, that the temperature changes really drastically. So I make sure that we keep it in the house where the temperature is always the same and it's not going to get too hot or too cold out in the garage. At times I've put extra blankets and things out in the garage in tubs so I can keep the food security in the house. And also we've swapped out like seasonal clothes out of our closets to have room when we had a whole bunch of people here at the house. And that way the tubs of clothes would go to the garage and then food security would get tucked underneath the beds in tubs or in the closets, and it helped us have a little bit extra space and we knew everything was here if we needed it. We do have freeze-dried items by ReadyWise and Simple Kitchen, and those are 10-gallon cans of freeze-dried things, or they're the black and red buckets that you might see sometimes in my food storage. Those are a higher spend item, and normally once a year, it used to be when we got our tax return, we would just take a little bit of that money and buy one new item to put into our food storage, so it wasn't a big cost all at once. It was like once a year, and again, those have like 25 to 30-year shelf life. So we know that we have, you know, our rice and beans, we have seasonings, we have extra oil. If you keep coconut oil, it will last a lot longer than some of the other oils because it's solid. And then we have things like the protein, the canned meats and different items, and fruits and vegetables that are freeze-dried. So we do have things that we can rotate and make different kinds of meals. We also have our Burrow water filter here in the house, so we know that we can filter through water, and that is one of our water sources. And then down in our garage we have some of the blue jugs of water that twice a year we make sure to pour out and use on our garden or wherever we need to use it, and then we refill it with fresh water. So we have some extra water here. We have our extra food security. Now we are getting ready to move, and I've done lots of videos about this where I'm taking things that are in our pantry and we're trying to eat up as much as we can so we're not moving as much. That doesn't mean our long-term food storage. So those buckets will stay in the house until the week that we're moving, and when we do move to the new house, which we don't know when that's going to be yet, when we do move, we will take that with us. So I have been taking some of the things that I normally have in my pantry and putting them not in the glass jars but into the tubs so they can stay here in the house, and we can turn that pantry back into a bedroom for staging the house. So I hope this video kind of helps answer some questions and maybe start some conversations in the comments. If you don't know, we try really hard to answer every single one of the questions that we see come through. Sometimes YouTube kind of blocks them and we don't see them for a few days, but as soon as they pop up, we really do try to spend time and answer the questions. If you're looking for links and want to see what my pantry looked like before, we have videos of that 3 months ago, what it looks like and how we're downsizing things. And if you want more tips on how to save money on groceries, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button.